Hi, good morning. Yes, it's Christmas morning. How are you? Are you all right? I promised you'd be no escape, didn't I? Yeah, well, what do you mean you wanted to? You pressed on the wrong button. I know. Well, listen, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me here on this very special day. And of course, let's not forget to wish that very special person a wonderful birthday, right? That's so important, is it not, you know? And what I find interesting about Christmas Day is wherever you are in the world, it does unite people. But the bigger picture is this, of course, that a lot of people do, through no fault of their own, have to spend time alone or are simply on their own. You know, loved ones have passed and simply they are now where they are, making the very best of it, getting through life. But what I wanted to do today was simply make sure that you don't feel totally alone. I mean, you might wish to be at the end of this broadcast, you know. I said that with love, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. What we're going to do is try and give you a bit of entertainment, a bit of fun, and a chance to interact, you know. So you will see an email address at the bottom of your screen. Now, the reason why I wanted to explain this in a little bit more detail is, are you like me? I'm not digital at all, so I'll be getting help on this, you know. But the email address will allow you to send me, you know, your comments and messages, but don't forget to comment and like on the YouTube as well, because what I'd like you to do first before anything else is like and share this video, and if you can, underneath, you know, in the comments, wish someone, wherever it may be in the world, another country, wherever, the very best of a Merry Christmas. You know, let's try and share the world, as it were, so we all feel at least, you know, there's somebody else out there that we can talk to and at least feel we've connected to somebody on a day, particularly, as I say, for all those that are out there on their own. How are you? You're all right. Don't worry. I know you can switch me off if you want. Make a pot of tea, as long as you come back. I know I'm not doing this to myself, you know. But on a serious note, if we could do that, share and like and send it around the world, that would be wonderful. And as I say, what I'd like you to do with the email below is I'm going to be asking a few things and a few questions and stuff like that. So if you want to get involved, send me some stuff, you know, whether it be a comment or, you know, a picture, if you know how to attach them and stuff like that. Can I let you know, by the way, I found a very easy way of doing attachments now for you know, sending emails and stuff. I know, because I don't know about you, I get so confused in this digital world. But what the best thing to do, if you've got a picture, is to literally just take a picture of it on your phone and email it that way. You know, this business of scanning it and cropping it and snipping tool and all of this nonsense, I can't get to grips with that, can you? But then somebody said, well, why don't you do this? And I thought, well, why don't you show me that in the first place? Far easier, you know what I mean? So what I want you to do, as I say, is enjoy the program, sit back, relax, get a cuppa, have a cup of tea or a coffee or a hot chocolate, or indeed, if we're splashing out, a bit of a Horlicks, and we'll take you through some of the things that I think you may enjoy throughout what's happened, you know, some gossip, some chat, just a bit of fun and something to maybe get your mind going, you know, and think, oh yeah, I never know, oh, I forgot about that, you know what I mean? So without further ado, yes, let's just start this broadcast, and I'm going to throw this out there. I want you can see the email now, can't you? What I want you to tell me is, this year in 2023, it's apparently been the year of the hottest male. I know. I know it's not me. I can. Yes, I know. But of course, when we're talking about royal hottest males, of course, there was one man that really got the ladies going, particularly at the coronation. And for my favourite thing, I loved his involvement when, you know, the Pengate thing with His Majesty the King. And the pen went wrong, do you remember? And he just very quietly, didn't he, just manoeuvred things around Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Camilla. Camilla was desperately trying not to laugh in that video. I thought it was so funny, you know. But we're talking, of course, about Johnny Thompson, affectionately still known, even in his new title, as Major Johnny. But he's not the only sort of, you know, hot sex symbol, if you were, of course, the equerries, is he? No, there are others. What about Her Majesty the Queen's equerry? Yes, take a look at this. Meet Major Ollie Plunkett, the coronation's other hot equerry. The King and Queen consort weren't the only reason, apparently, what kept TV screens alight on that coronation day. Now, as I say, Major Johnny has had a lot of admirers, but with Captain Oliver Plunkett in town, he might simply just have some competitions. Now, royal fans apparently were quick to point out the Queen Consort's rather dishy royal equerry at the coronation, with Major Ollie getting quite a lot of traction on social media. Just to let you know, He serves in the Rifles, the regiment of which Camilla has been the Colonel-in-Chief since 2020, after succeeding Prince Philip. Now, basically, what does he do? He's one of the armed services that goes around with Her Majesty the Queen and, you know, basically looks after her. A nice job and part of history, as one can imagine. Finally, I know you all want to know this. Is Major Ollie, is he married? Well, no. Unlike Johnny, he's actually single, ladies. So, now, with the email on the screen, what I want you to do is let me know, who do you think, bit of fun, who is the hottest between Major Johnny and Major Ollie? Or do you have another royal favourite, you know, that you've picked out and thought, actually, you know, he's quite dishy? And for the fellas, of course, you know, is there anybody that you've seen, you know, ladies in waiting, assistants? I don't know about you, but there's some very beautiful girls that assist the Princess of Wales on her walkabouts. Oh, yes. And of course, you know, they don't necessarily get recognised. They're the ones that collect all the flowers. I'd love somebody like that, wouldn't you? Wouldn't it be handy if you could just do that in your supermarket? You know, here's the bags, walk off, you know, pulling your leg, of course. But, you know, let me know. As I say, you can see the email and it will remain at the bottom of the screen. Or indeed, have you met Major Johnny? Did you manage to get a picture with him? Have you met Major Ollie? Or have you just secretly been developing a crush over these last few months since he, of course, he debuted really to great prominence at the coronation? Do let me know. Here on our very special Christmas Day show, I wanted to share this with you because, as ever, I'd love to know what you think to this. Stars for sale, what do you think? I've noticed actually in this particular era that now more and more people are available for sale. I mentioned earlier this year that, I don't know if you know this, but there's quite a lot of these things, but the most prominent one really would be Cameo. And this is where you can reach out via social media to a celebrity, and for a set fee, they will either wish you a happy birthday, good luck with the exams, all of that sort of stuff. You know, major names are on there, including the likes of Neil Sedaka, amongst other people. Incredible when you think about it. But I wanted to ask you, have you ever paid for any star's picture or name? The first thing I ever really sort of remember seeing about this was a colleague of mine who was a brilliant guy. He's called David, and way back in the 1960s when he was a very young boy, he had his picture taken with Sooty. That's right, Sooty the Glove Puppet, you know, Sooty Sweep and Sue, Harry Corbett. And he said, just, you know, we were just chatting. I said, oh, it's a lovely picture. And he said, yeah, but, you know, Mum and Dad had to pay for it. And I said, you what? You had to pay? Yes, he said they had to pay. And I thought that was strange because, you know, when you think back, you would have assumed that would have just been deemed as publicity. Chatting around, that wasn't the only person that actually charged in that particular era. I'm sure it's gone on for a long time. I was at a garden party many years ago at Twickenham, which was Brinsworth House, the home, of course, of all the wonderful artists that go to live there if they've sort of fallen on hard times. Dame Vera Lynn was there, and she was charging to have her picture taken. She said, of course, it was for her charity. But again, it was a bit of a shock because people didn't necessarily expect to pay. Not only that, also, when you think about it, way back in the 1950s, Hilda Baker, a very prominent comedian over here in the United Kingdom, not only didn't have just, you know, pictures taken and charged for that, but she had personalized cards, which she would sign to you, but then you had to pay for them as well. So it got me thinking, have you ever paid for a celebrity? You know, would you pay for an autograph or having a picture with them? A friend of mine a couple of years back went to see Barbra Streisand in London, and you know, she had this wonderful picture. I mean, Barbara did look like a waxwork, it has to be said. And I said, are you sure this is Barbra Streisand? I mean, she looked totally different, you know. But apparently what happened was you paid the money in advance and then you go to meet them, which is called the sort of golden circle or something like that, you know. And then you don't go away with the picture. They take the picture, retouch it, Barbara, not you, and then they mail it on or email it on to you. I mean, strange business when you think about it. So do let me know, and if you can, and you've got a picture with a celebrity, maybe you paid for it or you didn't, let me know, and if you can attach it to the email, and what we'll do is we'll put some of them up in future shows so that we can see who you met, and do include detail like, you know, what year it was, when you met them, the purpose of it, were you glad to meet them, were they nice, you know, keep it sweet. But do you know what I mean? Things like that I'd love to know, because we've all got pictures with celebrities, and at that moment in time Meeting that person was the most important thing, wasn't it? But when you look back, would you now think, I wouldn't pay for that again? Do let me know. Stars for sale. Agree or disagree? Get your vote in. At this moment in proceedings, can we just say a very big thank you to everybody that is actually working on this day? You know, whether it be the fire services, nurses, doctors, everybody who literally, you know, the armed forces, the Royal Navy, the Navy, wherever it is in your part of the world, the British Army, you know, policemen, policewomen, you know, everybody really deserves our respect, because obviously they're doing it to keep us safe and things going. And on a day where everybody really just wants to sit down and relax and say, well, it's Christmas, why should I work? Certain people have to work, don't they? And that's the problem. Not everybody can take the day off. So after me, let's give them all a big wave. Yeah, come on, you can be daft. A big wave and a big thank you to everybody who's actually working and taking time out on this day. I've worked many Christmas days, by the way. Yes. When I worked in hotels as a struggling thespian, well, yes, I know, a thespian, you know what I mean? Well, the thing is, I tell you, the biggest thing was we used to do all the Christmas lunches and stuff like that. But if you were late with the afternoon tea and the cake at 3 o'clock for the Queen's speech, as it then was, oh, near riots, do you know what I mean? Oh, yes. And I remember once having to walk down with this trolley. And it was like one of those hospital trolleys, you know, with the casters going all the wrong way, cups clanking and everything like that. People were getting really annoyed, you know, because I was waking them up. They were glad, of course, then when they got to hear the Queen's speech. But that is the sort of thing about working in Christmas Day. I once had to do Santa as well. Yeah. And guess what? You know, and when you're very young, you do these daft things, don't you? You know, but there I was as Santa, right, in this hotel. And they said, well, you know, the Santa hasn't turned up, you'll have to do it. And when you're young, you just get forced to do things. You're not allowed to have an opinion, are you? So I get out there, right? And they said, oh, you know, here's the sacks of presents. But what they did was they gave me the wrong sack, you know. So basically I was giving all the boys' toys to the girls and all the, you know, the other way around to the boys. And of course, tears are flowing. People are getting upset, you know, mums and dads are getting a bit frazzled. And of course, then there's always one kid, isn't there, that says, you're not Santa. I saw you serving breakfast. There's always one Brady, isn't there? You know, the perils of working with children and animals, as they say, aren't they? It's always fun, though, isn't it, when you look back at these things? I'll share a story a bit later on, or maybe in the future, about the time I had to dress as a bear. The thing, yes, on the high street. The promotional world of a thespian. It never stops, you know. Well, let's have a quick break and take a look at this. Of Kensington, in the very heart of London, you think of all sorts of things, don't you? For some people it might be the late and beautiful Princess Di. She was sort of synonymous, wasn't she, with Kensington and the Sloane Square set. Remember those Sloaners? Or was it Sloane Rangers? Do you remember? A big thing, wasn't it? And there was even a book out at that particular point called The Guide to the Sloane Ranger. All the things you needed to do, of course, to be wealthy, rich, and apparently trotting up and down Kensington High Street. Today, though, we're in the very heart of South Kensington. And as I've often said here on the show, there's so much history just at every twist and turn. You see, this particular corner of London has a bit of a history for myself. As many people know, as a budding thespian, making his way, coming to London all of those years ago, in between jobs, you would have to take jobs, quite literally any job. So you worked at things like the Wimbledon tennis tournament's dinner alongside the winning champions, or indeed here in a smaller hotel. Now, little did I know that when I checked into this particular hotel, the Onslow Court, I was in fact checking into murder. That's right, you see, the hotel behind me here is now called the Kensington Hotel. Oh, it's all very posh in there, you know. But when I checked in a few moons ago now, let me tell you, it was a strange thing because you were still very excited about being in the very heart of London. You know, there you are, you're very young, you're going from job to job, you've got a lot of energy, you don't necessarily care whereabout you're staying as long as there's a bed, there's some food and a shower, you get the picture. I was working at that particular point for an agency, literally in the very heart of Soho, and you would go there, it was a bit of like a theatrical agency in many respects. You would go there and say, you know, is there any work? And they'd say yes, they want a manager here or an assistant manager there, and you would sign on for the period that they needed them. Now this hotel, for many people, literally, I had no idea. Remember, this is pre-internet. So when I arrived, and obviously they saw me, you know, they said, oh, you know, nice to meet you, etc. We've given you the suite. Little did I know that this suite once belonged to the infamous acid bath murderer. That's right, John George Hay. I kid you not. When you walked in, you see, the hotel had been very run down, and it was more a little bit like a, I don't know what you call it, like a boarding house. I do remember it having a red carpet, and everybody who was staying there was of a certain age, genteel, you might say, you know. But the thing was that even then, nobody actually said, oh, this was the infamy behind it. You see, John George Hay had done a very clever thing, you know. He basically had, what he felt, had organised the perfect murder. And what he did was meet people here, wealthy, affluent women who perhaps had checked into the hotel for a bit of respite. Perhaps, you know, they were now single and widows, and they were there to be looked after. It wasn't glitzy like the Dorchester, the Savoy or the Connaught, but it was sort of middle-class luxury, even back then. But he was very clever, as I say. Let me explain. John George Hay's biggest coup really was meeting Olive Durand. Now Olive lived in this hotel, and the thing with her was she was a bit of an entrepreneur. She decided literally after the war to come up with an idea about, you know, developing acrylic fingernails, something that we all know about today. Definitely a woman ahead of her time. And he used to get talking to these very wealthy women, literally just sat having dinner or tea in the lounge. He was very good looking, very shy, but very smooth in his patter. He'd had a bit of a difficult childhood where he hadn't really connected or made many friends. This way, we're not quite sure exactly how he got his money, but he did. Now, bit by bit, what he would do, he would sort of integrate himself and chat to you about, you know, where you kept your savings, which bank, did you keep them under your bed, that sort of stuff. And bit by bit, he would take you out on a drive, perhaps a drink up the road to the Royal Albert Hall, a night at the theatre. Remember, these are lonely women. And then he would pounce. You see, was as he developed this particular scheme, and we won't go into too much detail, but he would have a garage where he would basically say to them, look, you know, I've got some ideas in development too, would you like to drive down to it? This was just around about Crawley area, so not too far. People would disappear from the hotel, and he would tell the receptionist or the manager, oh yes, she mentioned she was going to stay with her sister in X or X. Finally, as I said, he got caught, quite frankly, by a huge mistake. You should really read into this story. It is fascinating because right up until the very final moment, nobody really knew exactly how he'd done it. They couldn't really pin it on him. He was so debonair and charming that even the police started to believe his theory and his background. Now, as you can imagine, quite frankly, when he did get caught, seemingly he didn't seem too bothered. I think he felt that finally he was getting some notoriety, a little bit of fame, and more importantly, people finally were starting to take some notice of him. So what happened? All of that, and once, of course, Haig had been, well, put into prison, then really his star escalated. It's incredible to think because already there were films put into production based around the story. So much so that even a national newspaper editor of a major national newspaper sadly described him as a murderer before the trial had concluded. So he had to spend 3 months in prison. Can you imagine that happening today? It's incredible, isn't it, when you think? But of course, the most macabre thing was the story behind Haig's sort of reasoning for doing this. You see, truly he felt that he could never be caught or indeed go to prison simply because there were no bodies. So if they couldn't find the body, how could he be possibly tried for murder? And there's another darker side, which I won't mention on this particular day, of what he decided he thought he could do in order to make sure that, well, he was revitalized, shall we say. Think Vincent Price in Theatre of Blood, you get the picture? But what's also very strange, and I don't think would be allowed to happen today, was this. You see, the very infamous Madame Tussauds had at that particular period a chamber of horrors. Some might suggest they still have it now, but they don't title it that, you know what I'm saying? But more interesting, I think, is this, that the, waxy people from Madame Tussauds, the, people who put the waxes together, were given permission to go and meet Haig in his cell prior to, of course, his final outcome. And they took measurements, eye colour, hair strands, that sort of stuff, so that they could then put together a particular gruesome waxwork. But Haig had another idea as well. Oh, he thought, well, here's some clothes, maybe you want to dress my wax in these clothes. According to that particular source, he was absolutely thrilled, excited by the idea of finally being recognised, albeit for something so grim. They did explain to him, look, you will be in the Chamber of Horrors, no, that's fine, and if at all they got it finished prior to that, could he possibly have a picture, so he could check it over for authenticity and stuff like that. Incredible to think. The end came, of course, in August 1949, but his story truly did live on. As I mentioned, lots of people were checking into the hotel and having tea there with this sort of gruesome reality, wanting to look round, all that sort of stuff, at exactly where this happened. Nothing like a bit of notoriety, is there? It's never really bad for business when you think about it. As I go right back to the beginning of this video, as I say, when I checked in there, I didn't know these things. I'm new to London, I'm finding my way, all that sort of stuff. And you can see that everybody, all members of the staff, they were sort of now asking questions. And I thought, no idea, didn't know what they were on about, So when you think about it now, however glitzy, glamorous and all that sort of stuff and the renaming is, when you look at the Kensington, it does have an infamous history. And as I've often said here on the show, when you walk around the streets of London, like you do in any big city, there's always history there. It's just that you and I possibly don't know it existed. But if you dig a little bit deeper, well, yes, you do find it. Haig was finally hanged by the infamous hangman Albert Pierpont, and apparently lots and lots of people were desperate to see the outcome. Naturally, it was a private situation. Now, as the story really escalated, as I say, it was turned into an NBC radio drama, fictionalized, of course, and moved on, turned into a movie, and then, as I pointed out, also turned into a TV drama with Martin Clunes. So some might suggest that this dark history of London, this particular man, Haig, really did get his dream. He's still being talked about today, and as I say, if you dig a little bit deeper in the darkest alleyways of South Kensington, you can imagine what it must have been like in the 40s, surrounded by the acid bath murderer. I don't know about you, but have you noticed how when you're doing festive food, people are always really sort of, what's the word? Competitive, I think, aren't they? I've got friends who say, oh no, I do my roast potatoes like this, and I'm just grateful of food, aren't you? Anything. If you are on your own today, and I don't mean to keep saying that, but if you are, do make sure you look after yourself, give yourself a bit of a treat. It doesn't matter, does it, whether it's Christmas Day lunch. If you fancy, cheese on toast with a bit of Worcestershire sauce, ooh, that's lovely, isn't it, or a bit of a trifle, yes, just treat yourself. It's about looking after yourself, making yourself feel wanted and feel good. It's not always about, all the trimmings that go on, But the reason why I wanted to mention this particular point of the program was this. I had a friend a while back, and he'd never, I kept saying, oh, I love a mince pie, Oh, do you? He said, yeah. Now, genuinely, he thought, right, that mince pies were filled with, like mince from the butchers. And when you think about it, you can understand that it wasn't a thing that he had in his country. And I think he was appalled, that we were eating this sort of mince inside pastries. Anyway, when I brought some in, I said, no, it's like this. Oh, all right. I said he liked them, started wolfing mine off, which I'd never introduced him at that point, you know what I mean? But it's interesting. I wanted to know, what sort of special thing do you make, every year for yourself? Is there something that you've got your own little family recipe for and stuff like that? If you have, again, if you want to, only if you want to, do send an email with some of that in, and we could read and share some of these recipes out. Because I don't know about you, I often love and think, well, that's a good twist. A friend of mine did this, which I thought was lovely. Brussels sprouts. I know we'll be dividing the nation here, but well, the world, in fact, won't we? I love Brussels sprouts, but I remember going to a carvery a while back, right? And a carvery, I know, you know, you don't see them now, do you? But I love carveries because you could get bits and pieces that you'd never tried before and thought, well, I'll have a go at that. Now, they had Brussels sprouts, well, with chopped up bits of bacon, but on top of that, melted cheese, which was then lightly burnt. Ooh, absolutely delicious. Bit of cranberry on top. Meal in itself, and very cost effective when you think. So if you've got a very special thing that only you do at Christmas, or maybe Easter or something like that, and you think, no, this is always a family treat and they like it, let's have a look. And if you've got any pictures, again, you know how to attach them on the email below, like and share, and let's share with the rest of our wonderful chums and our community. You never know, you could become a superstar. You could be cooking for all of us. Yes? Oh yeah, we'll be round if we like it. Absolutely. Amen. Behind me here is a truly iconic London landmark, because way back in 1963, oh yes, not that long ago really, is it, when you think about it, but way back in 1963, this brilliant iconic landmark opened. It was the very first Hilton outside America, and it was one of the tallest buildings, if not the tallest building in London at that time. Anybody simply wanted to stay there. It was the meeting place of the rich and the famous, and of the good and infamous, if you know what I mean. Now, way back at the very start of 1963, when it opened, it'd already been featured in a major feature film called Three Hats for Lisa. And that basically was a very clever marketing ploy by the pop star of the day, Joe Brown. Simply because Joe's a good-looking fella, and they realised that if they had Joe on a balcony or going in and out of the London Hilton Hotel, well then, you know, that might attract the young, hip, swinging crowd. This was, after all, the swinging 60s, as one can imagine. But of course, even with that movie, they were always looking for marketing ploys, new ways of getting the brand new rich, elite and swinginess of London as it took off. You have to remember, this is a period, obviously, of a big intersocial change. Suddenly teenagers were powerful, they had more money than ever, they had their own icons, and it wasn't really like the 1950s, because obviously in the 1950s we had pop stars, major pop stars like Elvis, Billy Fury, Cliff Richard, all of that sort of stuff. But really, by the time the 60s came around, people felt that these were their people. They looked and dressed more like them, they had haircuts like them, and of course people like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, Marianne Faithfull, Jerry and the Pacemakers were really making great rounds across the world. And when they were spotted here at the London Hilton, it truly meant something. But then, someone inside the Hilton had a very clever idea, and it literally changed everything. Oh, picture the scene. Goldfinger's now opened. It's one of the biggest movies of the year. People are simply flocking to see James Bond, played by Sean Connery. Of course, look at the delightful and delectable Shirley Eaton, virtually all painted gold. And who remembers that now infamous marketing idea about that? That's right, you see, you couldn't paint Shirley fully gold. You had to leave a patch open so that the skin could breathe, or else she would have been suffocated in gold paint. What a way to go though, eh girls? Now what's interesting, as I say, is a man working inside the London Hilton, the food and beverage manager, had a very good idea. He had a contact, you see, over at Pinewood Studios. And well, he went along to see him and they had a chat. And suddenly he's got a bag full of, well, what you might call now very expensive goodies. These were sort of artifacts, bits and pieces from the set of Goldfinger. People didn't save things the way they do today, didn't realise the value. Suddenly, when he got back here to the London Hilton, he suggested to the bosses, well, why don't we open a 007 bar, a James Bond bar? Now, here's where it gets interesting, because they hadn't really patented that brand. So anybody, a little bit like the Beatles, if you remember with Brian Epstein, you could do Beatles talcum powder, Beatles wigs, all of that sort of stuff. And so, by 1965, the 007 bar, James Bond, was open. And it was an instant success. It was claimed that the 007 room became the hottest bar in London, serving martinis, stirred, not shaken, of course. Oddjob greeted the guests at the lists and escorted them to the bar. These apparently included Dinah Rigg, Peter Ustinov, Ronald Reagan, Telly Savalas, Raquel Welch, Michael Caine, John Cleese, Playboy Hugh Hefner, so many more different people. But the real piece de resistance, actually, the real lure to come into this particular bar at the Hilton on Park Lane, was none other than this man. Who remembers him? That's right, from Goldfinger, Oddjob. We all could do with an odd job, couldn't we? You know, do you remember the flying bowler hat which sliced things off? Oh, yes. Well, Harold Sakata was employed by the food and beverage manager to literally become the host of the 007 bar. And he even wore the clothes that he wore in the movie. Can you imagine getting away with that today? I'm not sure you'd be allowed to do that, but it's fascinating to think. The bar, as I say, became an instant success. Anybody who was anybody wanted to be seen or indeed heard there. They had a discotheque. They had literally, you know, band singers. Even people made records there. It was such a phenomenal place to see or indeed to meet. As you can imagine here on this particular strip on Park Lane, it didn't go down with the rivals, with of course the likes of the Dorchester. That was now seen as rather stuffy. Let's not forget that had big royal association with Prince Philip having his stag do there all of those years ago. This was the swinging 60s. This was, of course, well, 007 time. Quite frankly, by the time Thunderball came round, they couldn't keep up enough. They were open from 6 p.m. to 2 p.m. and everybody came here. Well, apart from Sean Connery. He didn't particularly get on well with the producers of 007. So even though they had an after-show party here, apparently Sean, well, wasn't too keen. Now, I've been lucky enough to attend many events here at the London Hilton. I remember a spectacular afternoon being entertained by the brilliant composer Tony Hatch. Remember Downtown? And when you go in here, you can sort of see, in many respects, that it's still very grand, still very gracious, and still quite glitzy inside. But how different it would have been in the swinging 60s, with, of course, the likes of, well, Oddjob at the door, a martini, beautiful ladies wherever you turn, and more importantly, being seen in the right location at the right time with the right people. Now, did you ever visit the 007 bar when you came to London in the swinging 60s? Were you here? Did you experience it? And more importantly, have you got any pictures? Or did you simply love the 007 films and did you think, yeah, I wouldn't mind being part of that? As ever, do let me know, like and share and comment in the bottom. And as you know, there's now a way of sending any pictures or extra thoughts via that email address. Now, are you ready for your martini? Do you fancy a bit of a musical interlude? Of course you do, yes. Because way back, well, way back, when it was warm anyway, at least not like today, we went to meet a man at a wonderful place in Barnsley in South Yorkshire. Remember? The Astoria Centre, which is run by a brilliant organist himself, the former Blackpool Tower organist, Kevin Grinnell. But we were there, of course, to meet the current, still at 40 years plus, Blackpool Tower organist, Phil Kelsall. Now, Phil delighted a packed crowd in the Astoria Centre in Barnsley, and he played beautifully. And of course, he is a man that is played in front of His Majesty the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales, and received, as we told you, a wonderful award in Windsor, an MBE. Not bad, eh? You know what I mean? For doing something that you truly love. Of course, many fans of a certain era will associate the wonderful world of organ music with the brilliant Reg Dixon. Mr. Reg Dixon, otherwise known as Mr. Blackpool. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of footage that you haven't seen before of Mr. Phil Kelsall delighting the crowd and being wonderful on those sparkling keys of the Wurlitzer organ, literally in the very heart of Barnsley. Now remember, if you know the song, don't join in, you'll only spoil it. Take it away, Phil. So we've come to the end of our time together, and as night falls, do you like the atmospheric? Yes, you see, I think of everything. As night falls, I just really wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out and spending a little bit of your Christmas day with me. It's truly appreciated. Many people say, Neil, what are you up to? Why are you not, doing it live or whatever? It's difficult, as I say, I'm working, and so, there's different reports for different channels. Very difficult to keep up, as I'm sure you can imagine. What is nice, though, is to be able to spend some time with you. I hope we've entertained each other. I hope we've had a giggle. Please don't forget to like and share it with all your friends. Why should you suffer alone? I'm pulling your leg, of course. And finally, I thought you might like this. Now, this is from, a stint, shall we say, on Broadway. That's where I was lucky enough to appear as Billy Flynn. And what was nice about this was the promotional tape. We couldn't decide which role originally I was going to undertake, whether that was going to be that of Billy Flynn or Amos Hart, the put-upon guy. So the recording you're going to see is for that version of Mr. Cellophane, which, of course, is about the man who literally nobody notices and looks right through him. Yes. Could you say that of me? I'm not sure. I know, too cheeky, aren't I? You know what I'm saying? But seriously, thank you so much for your wonderful, company on Christmas Day. Now, I could see when we started this video, that cake, I can see that cake was pretty full. Now, well, you've worked your way through that, haven't you? Don't think I can't see through this lens, I know what you're all up to. Save me a little bit and I'll see you on the other side. And if you want, just following this finally, there's a performance of Mr. Cellophane from the hit musical Chicago from yours truly. Merry Christmas, everybody, and once again, thank you.
Mr. Cellophane should have been my name, Mr. Cellophane, 'cause you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. I'll tell you, Cellophane could have been my name, Mr. Cellophane. It should have been my name, 'cause you can walk right by me, look right through me, and never know I'm there. Never even